everyone. Hope you're all doing well and are able to complete most of your work without too many struggles. Just want to come on and do another video for you on classifying triangles. We have our warm-up. It's on the distance formula, which I realize that these directions are wrong, but it is the distance formula. So I'll do one for you really quickly, and then you can do the other one by yourselves. I hope you all have access to my answer keys. If you can't, just know that you should be able to access them while you're doing the worksheet. And if you can't access them, let me know and I will try to fix that for you, because you should all have access to the answer keys while you're working. Okay, so distance formula. Distance equals the square root of x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. And it doesn't matter. I write it x1 minus x2. A lot of directions on videos will say x2 minus x1. It's the same thing. You're just taking an x value minus the other x value. Okay? So I'm going to break it down real basic in case you're still struggling on this. So the 2 comma negative 3 is my x1, y1. And the 5 negative 2 is my x2 minus, or comma, y2. Okay, then I'm just going to plug in the numbers that represent the variables. So I have d equals the square root of x1, which was 2, minus x2, which is 5, squared, plus y1, which is negative 3, minus y2, which is negative 2, squared. Okay, so it's not the coordinate. You're not taking the coordinate and subtracting them. You're not doing any x minus y's. It's always the difference of the x's plus the difference of the y's, both squared. Okay. So I have d equals the square root. Don't forget your square root, because some of you are, and then at the end, you're just leaving it, not realizing that you still need to take the square root. So write it down every single time. So 2 minus 5 is a negative 3 squared plus negative 3 minus negative 2, which is kind of like two negatives make a positive. So negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1 squared. Anytime you square a negative, it becomes positive. So d equals the square root of negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, plus negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. So I'll have distance equals the square root of 10. And I also want you, and the test will want you, to write it as a decimal rounded to the nearest tenth or the nearest hundredth. So please do take the square root of this and you'll get 3.16. And I just rounded to the nearest hundredth. So this is your complete answer. You need the radical, which is the square root of 10, and then the decimal rounded however they tell you to, 3.16. If it doesn't tell you how to round, it's always safe to go 2 or 3 decimal places. So I would recommend just always, if it doesn't say, just round 2 or 3 places. Doesn't take that much extra work to do. All right, so other one is on answer key. Again, if you can't see the answer key, let me know and I will fix that for you. Okay, so let's go to, here are the notes. Once again, you're classifying triangles based on their angle measure. These are all angles, and by their sides. These 3 classifications are by the sides. Okay, so you have acute, where all 3 angles are acute in your triangle. You have a right triangle, where just one of the angles is a right angle, and obtuse triangle has one obtuse angle. Obtuse means greater than 90 degrees. Acute means less than 90 degrees. Hopefully that is just a review. And then by the sides, You have equilateral, where you have 3 congruent sides or 3 equal sides. Isosceles is 2 congruent sides, and scalene is no congruent sides. I also put some other pictures on here. They're all basically saying the same things. If you don't like these pictures, you can always look some up on your own online. I just took them from online. All right, so first question, here's our little triangle. We need to first classify the triangle by its side length. So that's scalene, isosceles, and equilateral. Use the distance formula if you need to find a side length. Okay, so for AB, it's just a line, a vertical line going up and down, so I can use the grids to help me count. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is a side length of 5. So I'll write that down over here. AB is 5 units long. And then for BC, this line right here, I'm going to change colors. I can't just count squares because this is a diagonal line. It's going through the boxes, not evenly. Okay, so I do need to use the distance formula. So I'll need to figure out the 2 endpoints for C and for B. So C is located at -2, -5. And B is located at 0, -9. So then I go CB, and I'll use the distance formula once again. And remember, it's the difference of the x's, so -2 minus 0 squared plus the difference of the y's. So -5 minus -9 squared. And then I can do my quick algebra. I can just do this in my head. They're pretty easy. -2 minus 0 is -2 squared plus -5 plus 9, because minus a negative is positive. So we'll get 4 squared. And I have the square root of 4 plus 16. Square root of 20. And then for this, I do need a calculator, and it'll go to 4.47. Again, it didn't tell me where to round these numbers, so I just did 2 decimal places. And the reason why I needed to take the square root, there's no way that I can compare this 5 units with the square root of 20 units. I don't really know anything about those two. Well, if you don't know your squared and your square roots, you can't really tell the difference between the two. So that's why we look at the decimals. It's a lot easier to compare 5 and 4.47. Okay, so CB is 4.49 units. So that was that second side. And then the third side, I'll switch colors again. We're looking at AC. So I already have the coordinates for C. I need the coordinates for A, and they are 0, -4. Okay, so once again, I'll use the distance formula to find how long the segment AC is. Okay, so AC is the square root. We'll do the difference of the x's squared. So we have -2 minus 0 squared plus difference of the y's squared, which is -5 minus -4 squared. Same exact thing, just doing my quick algebra through here. -2 squared plus -1 squared. Get the square root of 4 plus 1, which is the square root of 5, which is 2.24. Okay, so I'll write that up top. We have AC with a side length of 2.24 units. Okay, so now that I have my 3 side lengths, I can classify my triangle based on those side lengths. And if you don't remember them, you can go back up here. None of our side lengths are equal, so it looks like no congruent sides is scalene. So I'll write this triangle is scalene because all three sides are different lengths. Or you can say it doesn't have any congruent sides, anything incorporating that those three side lengths aren't equal, aren't congruent, so forth. So is this triangle a right triangle as well? Consider the slopes, all right? This part, I don't anticipate many of you knowing from prior knowledge. So we're going to look at all three of the slopes. And remember, back, I think last semester, we were working with perpendicular lines. So you were given an equation like y equals 2x plus 4, and you wanted to find a line that was perpendicular to it. And your teacher probably said you need to find the opposite reciprocal slope because that gives you a perpendicular line. So perpendicular lines, perpendicular lines equals those right angles, okay, / 90 degrees, okay? And perpendicular lines, to have that, you need the opposite reciprocal slope. Okay, so that means, just going off on a little tangent, refresh your memory, that means if my slope in one line was 3, then the opposite reciprocal would be negative, because opposite sign, and reciprocal means I flip the fraction. And you're like, well, 3 is not a fraction. Remember, I can put 3 over 1 to make it into a fraction. So then I'm going to flip my fraction, and I'll have 1/3. So the opposite reciprocal of 3 is negative 1/3. All right, so let's look at the slopes for this particular triangle and see if we have any opposite reciprocal slopes. If we do, that means that we have perpendicular lines and right angles. Okay, so let's see. The slope of AB is actually undefined. It's a line going up and down, so there is no slope there. So this one is undefined. The slope for BC, and since I'm looking at a graph, I can just count using rise over run. I don't actually need to use the slope formula. If you want to, go for it, but you don't really necessarily need to. So rise over run, I'm going down 2, and I'm going right 1. So my slope is rise -2 over run, which is +1. And then my last side is CA. And that will have, let's see, what will the slope be? It looks like I'm going up 1 and right 2. So my slope is 1/2. Okay? So undefined, definitely not opposite reciprocal to BC or CA. So I'm looking at BC and CA. Are those opposite reciprocals? So let's see. Do they have opposite signs? Yes. One is negative, one is positive. And then reciprocal are the fractions flipped. So BC is 2 over 1 and CA is 1 over 2. So they do have opposite reciprocal slopes, meaning that the lines are perpendicular, meaning that they form right angles. Okay, so this is right, a right angle based on these two guys right here, because slopes are opposite reciprocals So we know lines are perpendicular and form right angles. Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop because I think this video is getting pretty long. If you need any other help on the other two, remember, can look at the answer key, or you can send me an email if you need any further help. So remember, for sides, you're doing the distance formula and comparing the side lengths. To look at the angles, you're looking for opposite reciprocals, and if they are, it's a right angle, and if they are not, then you're kind of looking at the grid lines. So grid lines always form 90-degree angles. If it looks to be less than the grid lines, then it's acute. It's less than 90 degrees. If it's going larger than the grid lines, that means it's going to be obtuse because it's greater than 90 degrees. And I'll go a little bit more into more detail in the next video when I do quadrilaterals. But if you are going through this and you're like, ooh, I still don't get it, send me a quick email and I will help you out further on that one. Good luck with the rest of this worksheet.